Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2 of the Visa and Sharan podcast, where we just answer questions that people have asked us on Twitter. Do you want to choose the questions?
Sure. I like Phil's question.
Phil asks, if or when you have a kid, will you be open or reticent about their life and how they are growing up?
Well, what's your answer?
Well, I do think that we should not use children for content. So I will not be discussing. So it would be kind of similar to how I talk about things in general, like how I talk about my family, for example. Like if I don't know if people notice, but I'm actually very careful not to say anything about my family that I don't feel comfortable. Well, that's very circular. I'm not explaining it. I think the analogy I might use is like it's kind of like photography with text and like photographing strangers potentially, or like having photos with strangers in it. Like if a stranger is in the background of a photo, it's not so bad. It's like, it's not really an invasion of their privacy if they are in the background of your photo, right? But if you go up to a stranger and you take a photo of their face, and the precise parameters of how exactly what's appropriate and what is not is like socially flexible. It's flexible to some degree, but it's not entirely arbitrary. There's like some understanding about what's appropriate and what's not. And similarly, I feel that when I'm talking about people who I have not discussed sharing the material with, I would not include them closer than I'm butchering the language, but like, I would not take a photo of a stranger's face and post it on Twitter. And similarly, I don't even post your face on Twitter, right? Like unless, and it's, yeah, so it's I try to respect people's what I perceive people's boundaries to be and what I think is appropriate. So I might say something like, I might find a way to tell a story about my child, but it wouldn't center the child, if that makes sense. Like it's my experience, and I will. I'm just going in circles. I'm going in circles.
I
but
think, to me, it's always like you can tell your story, and there are roles that supporting characters play in your story where you are the main character, but you cannot tell stories where someone else is the main character because like your experience of that is not for you to share. And I feel like I'm a bit unusual in that regard. Like most people don't seem to have the same qualms I do. But so the problem with kids is that you're telling stories about them years before they can actually consent to any of that. And with people who do the thing where they mind their children for content is just there is some disregard of a child's autonomy. And it was interesting. Like a few years ago, I think there were a series of articles of the first batch of children who were coming of age and looking back on their parents having shared content about them for like a decade.
Right.
And we look at it and it's something that we should maybe discuss, but it's fucked up lah. Once it's out there, it's out there. If your mom uploads a naked photo of you, there's child porn of you on the internet for the rest of your life. How do you get that back? You can't.
I mean, and so naked pictures are one thing, and I mean obviously you wouldn't want that, but like there is so much more than that, right? Like there is, and so I consider myself a writer, and I would like to write fiction and stuff one day, but there is this class of like voyeuristic writing that people do that kind of makes me sick sometimes. It's like and like lately, I think right now there's this bad art friend thing going around about this person who donated a kidney, and I don't even know the specifics. I didn't read the details, but like there are people who feel very comfortable just telling stories about other people without their consent because they just feel like, I exist and other things happen around me, and so I'm just going to tell you their story. And you might say that it's not illegal, but like it's just there's something as a person, as a human being, respecting other people's right to tell their stories in ways that they see fit. And I try to respect. So like one thing is I have a locked alt on Twitter where I might share some doubts and uncertainties, and like, I might say that I'm having a bad time with a parent, or with a spouse, or with a spouse, I say in the abstract as well. But like, those are there's a smaller group of close friends, and I trust them not to repost it, and there's a right place and time for different things. And I feel like in this internet age of context collapse, people don't think about this enough, and it's a necessary part of functioning healthily as a person, I think.
Yeah, I just remembered, like, I'm thinking, like, the ones I hate most are pictures where parents take photos of their kids, like using a Dyson vacuum or whatever because it's a Dyson sponsored post, and Dyson is great for kids. And there was, like, a while ago, there was this one American mommy blogger, and she wrote a post that was like, I know which one of my kids is the least photogenic and gets the least clicks.
I remember that, because he gets the least likes. Jesus. That was so...
And I'm like, wow. And I think for us, in some ways, like, we kind of, put our feet in the water with this, with, like, our cats.
Yes.
And, like, there have been some posts that, like, maybe Visa puts about our cat that, like, I feel embarrasses our cat, even though it's a cat. Like, it's just we can test our boundaries
right.
with a creature that cannot consent to any of this. And even then, like knowing that there are some posts that will make me uncomfortable is a thing that we can use as a marker of some kind.
That's a beautiful example, right? Like, a pet is indifferent to human. No cat cares what other people think of it online, but you get to kind of navigate. Like, I have said elsewhere that cats just make fantastic photography subjects, because they just sit there and you can just take pictures of them, and you don't need to feel bad about, are you being too intrusive or whatever. And yet you have feelings when you see, if you take a picture of a cat in, like, an unglamorous position, you're like, I probably shouldn't share this, like, it just makes my cat look bad. And it just starts like that, right? And it's a whole lot that goes into it, but that's the general vibe. Next question. When you have a disagreement or something that's a problem that affects the both of you that needs to be resolved, how do you go about it? Sai asks.
Well, there are two things. One is figuring out what kind of time scale this problem is on.
Mm-hmm.
And one is how it affects each of us.
Mm-hmm. It's such a broad, abstract question.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we don't solve our problems, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, like, you can question each thing. So what does needs to be resolved mean? Most things don't really need to be resolved, right? Most things can be left unsolved for a remarkably long time. And I mean, I think if we have crises, we're pretty good at dealing with crises.
Yeah.
Right? But we haven't faced a crisis in a while.
Yeah.
But so the most challenges in relationships are the things that are probably not going to get solved anytime soon. So you have to live with it. You have to live with the process of making slow and unglamorous progress.
Yeah. I mean, I said there are two things, but there are actually three, right? Like, the third one is it a problem that is, us against the world, or is it a problem that's me against you?
Right. Us against the world is easy, right? Like, fuck other people. We'll
well, that's you weren't always very good at that.
Yeah, that's true. When we first started dating and got married, I was not a very how do you say this? I was gonna say not a very willing participant, but even that sounds like a terrible thing to say. I was not very good at being in your corner. I was like,
well, you were conflict avoidant, and that's conflict avoidant with the world and conflict avoidant with me.
Yeah. And
I think the most important thing, like, we've said this before, like, the most important thing is in a relationship, you need to learn to fight with each other. Like, that is very, very important.
Yeah.
Knowing how to fight with each other is like a fundamental skill in your toolkit.
Yes.
And we had to learn that. He had to learn that. I had to learn how to fight with him because he does not fight the same way I fight. Yeah, but once you have those skills, it's really rearranging the Lego blocks in a way, right? So you gotta know what the disagreement is, what you both think of it, what you can compromise on and what you can't, and then you have a solution. Or sometimes you don't have a solution, but you have a comfortable non-solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. We're still figuring it out. We're still learning to get better at. I think sometimes what how I lead into an uncomfortable conversation is that, like, we intend to be together for the rest of our lives, and so, like, if we can't figure out a way to have these awkward, difficult conversations now, then we're just gonna subject each other to nonsense for decades. So it's like there's some discomfort you have to lean into, but even then there's like timing, context. It helps that neither of us has a job, so it's like we can. But even so, it's like right now I'm working on my book, and the book consumes like most of my headspace, and so I do acknowledge that this is I am making a request, right? I'm making a request at you, that please don't, be difficult until please and not even so, even me saying please don't be difficult, that's a very me-centered point of view, right? Because it's like, if we are going through something together, or if something needs to be addressed, I'm basically saying please try not to involve me, and I'm kind of shutting you out in a sense while I work on this thing. And sometimes that's the way something is, and like I have to be, and personally I feel like I have to be grateful for that not every partner is willing to give their partner that kind of space. And I've always felt that, like, in my love language has always been give your partner as much space as they need. And one of our funny conflicts is that we have different amounts of needs for space, and we have different amount of needs for togetherness. And it's like, you can't love a person the way you want to love them. You have to love them the way they want to be loved. Cheesy, but true. Like, it's true. Like, people get very invested in loving their partner the way they want to love them.
Yeah.
And then in so doing, they deprive their partner of the love that they want to receive.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm doing so much for her, and I'm doing so much for him, but neither of them feels it or cares.
Yeah.
And then it's like decades of that, and then it's like horrible. Yeah. You get it. Next question. What are some weird or fun things about Visa that he never talks about online?
There's nothing you don't talk about online.
Yeah. That's a very short answer to the question. Is it really? Yeah. What do I not talk about online? The things that I don't talk about online are neither weird, are not the fun things. If there's anything fun, I typically talk about it online. So that's easy to skip.
Like a few days ago, I was searching on Twitter for something else, and I found that tragic post where you were involved in a serious study of cum gutters. And that's everything, right? Like, we're at my parents' place, evening out, and Visa's taking screenshot of cum gutters. There's nothing that Visa will not share online.
I mean, so I made a deliberate choice to do that because I feel I'm still quite passionate about this. I feel like language.
What, cum gutters?
No, I'm passionate about language. I feel that language should not be massacred. If there was I don't mean to be prescriptive about it, but like, if people are using words the wrong way, I feel like you should at least.
Cum gutters?
Yes. Yes, I'm still passionate about this. Like, once you start using a phrase wrongly, you have now diminished the utility of that phrase.
Correct.
And that is a disservice to
cum gutters.
to the pool of language. It's not about it's about the principle of language. All right.
Yes.
Kai asks, "What's your favorite thing about me?" Do you want to not answer? You don't have to. It's a very personal question.
What's my favorite? I can only have one.
Aww.
He's kind.
Aww. It's true.
Yeah. He's kind.
And how do you know that I'm the one?
I don't. I still don't.
Fair enough.
I think the one is, like we've talked about this as well, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole fairy tale, marriage, relationship, love of your life, the one, like, what's that guy, that song?
Tim Minchin. If I didn't have you, someone else would do.
Yeah.
Your love is 1 in a million.
How did I know that you were the one? Did we ever have that kind of conversation? No, right?
I believe that, again, I won't get specific in this episode, but like, we went through some conflict where caused by external factors, where most people would assume that the easy thing to do would be to walk away, and I didn't, and you didn't, and I feel like in that moment where we both could see that the other person was a stubborn motherfucker, that's the moment you know that the other one. I mean, not
But you don't even know that that's the one. It's just like,
you just know that
I'm
this,
not letting this.
yeah, this is a sufficiently stubborn motherfucker.
Yeah.
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 Righto.